So it's my pleasure to welcome you to the X annual, I say X because I'm not sure exactly what number it is, Civil Society Forum, which has been co-hosted by the NGO Committee for Social Development, Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, and the Department of Economic and Social Affairs. It's really a pleasure to have you here. I hope that it wasn't so difficult to find conference room 3. My guess is everybody's legs took them to conference room 4 unintentionally. And you looked at an empty room and thought, where's civil society? Well, here we are. So you have the unfortunate honor of listening to me for the next hour. Well, I try my best to MC a session with our most, I would say, prominent speakers. First we have Mr. Nicholas Hannigan. I understand that in the program you have, it's actually Louisa Ruru. However, because the chair of the commission this year has a meeting of all the chairs of all the commissions that has started already, it would be only polite of us to allow him to take the floor first and share a few remarks, at which point he's going to politely absent himself in order to continue advocating these issues in those other spaces. So without delaying further, I'll just introduce the Deputy Permanent Representative of Iceland, Mr. Nicholas Hannigan. His bio, I believe, is in your packet, but if you don't know him yet, then you haven't been paying close enough attention. So let me just point out the VDR and chair of the commission this year.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you also to my colleagues for the flexibility to allow me to start first. I know you know that the nature of meetings is they always start late unless you're late. So I'm very happy to start here so I can get to the other meeting. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the NGO Committee on Social Development for inviting me here. It's an honor and a pleasure. And the topic, of course, is a key topic. It's a really interesting topic. It's one of the keys to eradicating poverty. It's interesting that there seems to be a growing consensus that social protection plays a key role not only in social but also in economic and political development. So the power of the tool of social protection, of course, social protection can be defined in various ways and has various aspects, but it's being, the realization is that this is a truly important tool. As you probably know, I mean, in Agenda 2030, okay, social protection is not an SDG, but it crops up in quite a few of the SDGs. It crops up in, it's mentioned explicitly for the achievement of SDG 1 on poverty, and in SDG 10 on inequality, and is mentioned as an essential achievement of SDGs 2 to 6, so that's hunger, healthy lives, education, gender equality, and access to water. There's research to show that social protection is also a fundamental instrument for achievement of pro-poor growth, employment, and MSME, micro, small, medium enterprises development. That's SDGs 8 to 9, as well as for social inclusion. And of course, SDG 16, governance, democracy. One could easily argue, I think, that social protection and the social solidarity it can bring about is an important part of a well-governed democratic society. And indeed, you can even argue that social protection makes a contribution to environmental issues through encouraging sensible consumption. So it's clear that social protection is a powerful instrument to address the multi-dimensional understanding of poverty, which we get in Agenda 2030. And as I've already said, it's also one of the keys to fulfilling quite a few of the other sustainable development goals. Allow me just a moment, a few lines as an Icelander and somebody from the Nordic countries, just to say something about what we do on social protection. I won't take the whole gamut. We're a typical Nordic welfare state. We provide safety nets, we provide free schooling, we provide free healthcare, in the very strong belief that this is a way to create a vibrant, economically vibrant as well as politically vibrant and equal society. Maybe rather than covering the whole range of what we do, because it'll be familiar to many. I mean, we're not the only welfare state in the world by any means, but just to mention the importance that we attach to the aspect of social protection, which also relates to gender equality, and to ensuring that women can participate on an equal footing with men in the workforce. Of course, for us, it's we're a small country. I don't know how many people here know what the population of Iceland is. Who thinks it's more than 1 million? Well, it's a bit over 300,000, and this means that for our economy to function, for our society to function, everybody who is capable of working and who is talented, that obviously includes all the talented women we have in our society, we need them in the workforce. And sometimes I say to people, well, okay, we're only 330,000, but compared to some countries where female participation in the workforce is very, very low, in a sense we're double that number because everybody is working pretty much. I think the figure is 88% participation of women in the workforce. So what do we do about that? Amongst other things, we have very generous maternity and also paternity leave, both to ensure that as far as we can, that the playing field for women is even in the home as well, and to also it's very good for fathers. Obviously, it means fathers can spend valuable time with their children. But of course, chiefly it allows women to, excuse me, once they've split this paternity leave with their husband, it gives them an equal chance to go back to work. Excuse me. We also on perhaps not exactly social protection, but nevertheless a support to it is our government's determination and indeed legislation on closing the gender pay gap, so that men and women are all equally paid for equal work. But enough of the specific case of Iceland, because it is specific, and of course we know that on social protection, particularly, the same recipe won't work equally in all places. We have to adapt, and this brings me to what is the Commission on Social Development doing on this. We have a resolution on the priority theme. As you know, the priority theme is strategies to eradicate poverty, to achieve sustainable development for all. And the resolution which is being negotiated at the moment is it's not. There are informals going on right at this moment, so I hesitate to give too much detail on it. But to me, it looks like a very good resolution, and it has a whole chapter on social protection, and a chapter of sort of 6-7 paragraphs, if I remember correctly. Of course, some of you may have seen it already. I don't know, but yeah, exactly. But in any case, as the draft is at the moment, it provides recommendations covering universal and gender-sensitive social protection. It covers has recommendations on ensuring that social protection is extended to all, so no one is left behind. And it also has recommendations on ensuring that not only the formal economy but the informal economy is covered by social protection schemes. And of course, also, as I mentioned earlier on, it emphasizes the importance of tailoring social protection schemes to national circumstances. Obvious, but really important. So I'm not going to take up more of your time. All I'd like to say is, as I said at the beginning, social protection is clearly a very powerful tool. If it's properly used, it is a powerful tool for eradicating poverty and indeed for achieving many other of the SDGs. And at least Iceland's experience is that social protection, I think it's probably the Nordic experience as well, is social protection is also a strong basis for a booming society, but also a booming economy, provided you get the mix of incentives and protection right. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention. I wish you well for the rest of the meeting, and I thank my colleagues.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. It's very nice to do the experience of Iceland. I think there's much that we have to learn, and also much that we have to interrogate. As I'm sure you're very well aware, you can't just apply what works in one place to another. And I think that's a question we'll try to be thinking about today, is what does it look like in different locations? And we appreciate your advocacy on behalf of civil society and on behalf of social protection and those for whom we are all actually working, which is those who are living with the greatest disadvantage. So thank you for sharing your time with us this morning, and best of luck. So with that, I have the pleasure now of turning the floor to Ms. Bettina Louise Rupp. She is the Executive Director of Friedrich Ebert Stiftung in New York. She has been a long time, she and her organization have been long-time collaborators with us on this forum, and we have much gratitude to extend to her and to FES for making this possible, in fact. So you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Daniel. It's a great privilege and a great pleasure to welcome you also on behalf of the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung today. And I'm really glad that I can be here. I actually thought this morning that I might need to stay home because of a cold, so I hope this is not coming in my way right now and that you can hear me easily. It is really important for us to be associated with this civil society forum as an institution, and also personally. We have, the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung has been associated with the Social Summit since its inception in 1995, when the summit took place in Copenhagen. It was a very important area of work for the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung in Germany, but also across the globe in a way, internationally, with our offices in a number of countries. We are a publicly funded German institution, a civil society organization, whose work is based on the values of freedom, solidarity, and justice. And these values inform our programs, both with regard to policy analysis, to policy dialogue, but also educational programs. And we have an office here in New York since almost 40 years, which focuses on multilateral issues, and I have the pleasure to work in this office with my colleagues since 2015 now. I think people in this room often feel that progress is a snail, like we say in German. I don't know if that saying exists in English as well. But it's sort of a really sort of long and slow process. And if we look at social protection and our understanding of social protection, we must really say we have come a long way, and it has developed very strongly, and there is something like a political momentum right now which sort of helps us probably to really achieve universal social protection in all countries. It's very clear that everybody needs social protection, and it's very clear that we need universal social protection, which means that we protect everybody, and that we cover all risks. So it's very important. We had the ILO in 2012 launching the recommendation number 202, which sort of laid a solid foundation to work on social protection on different levels. And we always must remember that I find that employment and work and decent work is one very basic and very important role of or pillar of social protection. And then when we talk about work, we mean work both in the formal sector and in the informal sector. Then we have come very far. It shows also a new ILO report, which many of you have seen probably, which has just come out on social protection, and it has a wealth of information and a wealth of data, and I think it's very helpful for us to use it for working on social protection. And as it was mentioned already by Nicholas Hannigan, we now have a lot of support also by the 2030 agenda and by the Sustainable Development Goals. And that really sort of pushes, again, for a multi-dimensional approach to social protection, and also emphasizes a lot, very strongly how necessary it is to sort of get out of the silos and to be sort of multi-dimensional and to have an integrated strategy. I think now civil society is part of a global campaign which works and calls for universal social protection, and it's sort of a broad understanding of civil society and of stakeholders which are involved, I think, which we have to have. So I think we talk about parliaments, we talk about civil society organizations, parties, but trade unions, business associations, international organizations like ILO and World Bank, and also, obviously, governments. I think the public sector plays a very crucial role in setting up the framework, particularly for social protection. So I think we need all the ideas which are now in this room, and all the experience and expertise which civil society organizations have to bring this thing really forward, and to reach, to achieve the dual objective, to reach the furthest behind first, and to actually leave no one behind. So I would like to thank both our co-organizers, the NGO Committee on Social Development and the Social both the co-chair of the Civil Society Forum, and I would also very much like to thank Under-Secretary General for Economic and Social Affairs of the United Nations, Mr. Louis Liu, for joining us, and also His Excellency Juan Somalia, who will be our keynote speaker just after we had this first round of inputs this morning. So I wish you all well, and I wish that we have a very fruitful and helpful discussion on universal social protection and its role to combat multidimensional poverty. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Louisa, and I will just turn the floor right over to Katie. By the way, she's one of the co-chairs for this Civil Society Forum. In case you don't recognize her from last year, she's back and better than ever.
Your Excellency, distinguished guests and colleagues, it is my great honor to be co-chair again this year, along with Lynn Hensel-Hirsch. But I would also like to give a special thank you to Marie D'Amato Rizzi. And she's been working 6 to 7 hours a day to help put this forum together. As many of you know, typically this forum is known to precede the Commission, or at least be the launch of the Commission. But this year is very special because we are in the middle of the week, or at the end of the week, at the middle of the Commission. And by now, many of you have attended plenary sessions, general debates, high-level panels, morning briefings, and side events. And with that, by hearing what you understand, it is crucial to understand the practices, the challenges, and the emerging issues that we've learned, to come together today and understand all the different dynamics and the crossovers and how can we move forward in the work that we do in civil society to help promote social protection, and how can we link it with the SDGs. Such as this morning, we've heard leaders from the UN, member states, civil society, and the private sector we will hear. And also this afternoon, we have something very special with the regional breakouts. It's going to be hands-on experience from small groups and develop action plans. And how can we connect and still move forward for the year. So I do wish you all a fruitful civil society forum and a successful commission. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tavi. As I think she mentioned, this is meant to be an interactive morning session, but the interactivity will take place after we hear from a number of distinguished speakers, for those who have been arriving. Also, those who have come late, unfortunately, the chair of the commission had to depart early. He's already delivered his remarks. For those who missed them, they were fantastic, the best things you've ever heard. So I now have the great pleasure of handing the floor over to the Undersecretary General.
Good morning, everybody. Mr. Chairman, distinguished representatives of civil society, distinguished keynote speaker, Honorable Juan Somalia, he will give the keynote speech after me. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by thanking you for the invitation to address the Civil Society Forum. This forum has been an important complement to the Commission for Social Development for many years now. Your debates and the Civil Society Declaration issued each year are always very informative. I will return to this year's declaration in a moment. Let me also thank Frederick Herbert Stiftel, the FES, for once again partnering with the NGO Committee in organizing this forum. The theme of your forum this year is special protection, including flaws. The important one that we in DESA, the Department of Economic and Social Affairs of the United Nations, are also working on. Our current report on the world social situation addresses the role of social protection in promoting inclusive societies. The evidence clearly shows that universal social protection is a very powerful tool for development that can tackle inequality and social exclusion. Very few countries around the world have been able to reduce poverty and improve living conditions on a broad scale without comprehensive social protection systems. Freedom from deprivation is not only a recognized right, it is a central goal of social development. Ladies and gentlemen, there are estimated 767 million people living in poverty in 2013. Without social protection, there would have been estimated 165 million more people living in poverty. If social protection were more widely available around the world, we would surely achieve the sustainable development goal of eradicating extreme poverty by 2030. Today, only 29% of the global population enjoys comprehensive social protection coverage. But even in countries where universal protection is guaranteed by law, some vulnerable segments of society do not have access to such programs. Social protection comes in many forms, but be it guaranteed health care, unemployment insurance, pension schemes, or child grants. The intention is always the same, that no one should fall beneath a certain floor of living standards. It will be interesting to study contributions these programs make and whereby they can be more widely applied in coming years. The programs should assist in providing a life of dignity for all. Your deliberations here and at other forums around the world will enrich this debate and provide much needed data to support research and decision making. Let me conclude by once again reiterating our commitment to a genuine partnership with civil society in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. No one has all the answers, but one thing we do know is the importance of partnerships with a wide range of stakeholders. Governments, civil society, academia, and the private sector need to work together to promote sustainable development. I therefore pay tribute to all of you coming from all walks of life, from all corners of the world, for your commitment to social development and for the contribution you make to the provision of social development. I wish you a constructive and rewarding forum. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I want to also highlight the significance of the presence of the Undersecretary General. Having an individual at this level join us really does demonstrate a genuine desire for partnership and joint endeavor looking for solutions to the problems facing humanity. So again, our gratitude to you for making the time to come this morning. So now we are going to shift the panel. We're going to switch into a keynote address. But as we do that, I'll just make a couple of brief announcements. So firstly, the NGO committee, and if you're unaware of who we are, please find somebody from the committee. If you could raise your hands if you're on the NGO committee. All of these people are in service to the rest of you in trying to make this an enjoyable experience and a fruitful one. And that doesn't just go for this commission and for this forum, but also for the whole year. But we are organized in a number of task forces, one of which is called the Grassroots Task Force. And they've conducted a survey on NGO awareness of the SDGs and engagement with governments and others in efforts to implement the goals. There are 3 briefs available giving survey results, and copies of these are available somewhere in the room. If somebody on the team could point to where they are. Veronica, please.
They are still to be put out.
So they are unavailable as yet.
On the table.
They will be put out on the table at some point. There are 3 separate surveys, so please take those. There also may be a sign-in sheet somewhere. It's right there. If you haven't found the sign-in sheets, then it's the sign-in sheet's fault, and you can blame it. But make sure you sign in. Lastly, before I give the introduction to our distinguished keynote speaker, he wrote me yesterday and asked a very pertinent question which I was unable to answer. And he may hold a grudge against me for not answering it. The question was, who here is from different regions of the world? And we did not ask that question in our sign-in. So what I'll ask, in order to make sure everybody gets their exercise for the day, is that I'm going to call out a region, and if you're from that region, please stand up. Okay? So we'll try this with North America and Western Europe. And anyone from Asia? Asia Pacific. That includes the small island states. Because you want Australia, don't you? Anyone from Australia, Oceania? There we are. So now I hope, Mr. Somavia, that helps to answer your question. And I extend my apologies for not doing so in writing. So Mr. Somavia, for those who don't know, is many things. He was the chair of the World Social Summit, which occurred in 1995 in Copenhagen. He was ambassador of Chile to the United Nations, at one time president of ECOSOC, at one time president of the Security Council. He was the Director General of the International Labor Organization. He's currently the Director of the Diplomatic Academy of Chile. So anyone who is being trained in the Diplomatic Corps of Chile, if I understand that correctly, is passing through his supervision. But most important of all of these things, he is a genuine, sincere, compassionate individual. If you haven't heard him speak, you're in for a treat. And if you have heard him speak, you're still in for a treat. We are really quite delighted and grateful that he has extended his stay in New York to join us this morning. And with that, I have the great pleasure of handing the floor over to Ambassador Juan Somavia.
Thank you, Daniel, for that introduction. Undersecretary Yu, thank you so much for being here, because I think that the fact that the forum is part of the official program, and in a certain sense your presence here sort of confirms that, I think is very important. It's essential that this be part of the process, and I will make some reference at the end of how I see the challenges that civil society has in front of it, looking towards the future. Thank you for the Frederick Ebert Foundation. Mary mentioned that the Fed has been extremely active with the Social Summit, and I can confirm that it was a very important support that we had at the time, and we should have to explain and say that it wasn't a crazy idea, this idea of having a summit, which wound up being the biggest meeting of its state up to that time in the UN, and which has now become the foundation of the social dimension of sustainable development. So thank you so much. Well, you said that it was a treat to listen to me. I have a big problem in relation to that, because this is the fourth time that I'm speaking in this session. I spoke in the inaugural panel. I then participated in 2 side events on social protection, and now I'm here. So the danger that some of you may have been in some of those other places, and that you say, oh, here we go again, Somavia repeating itself. It's a big danger that I'm in front of me. I will try to make it as different as possible and through different windows, but you will you will hear some of the things that I've already said. Let me say as a background, we have two reports in this session. A report by DESA, very useful report by DESA. That was one of the places in which I was. And you also have an ILO report on social protection and social protection clause, which is an enormous amount of data, which I think is extremely important. And I want to recognize Isabel Ortiz here, who is the head of the Social Protection Department of the ILO with an ILO team. So Isabel, thank you so much for that report. And what I found extremely interesting is the declaration. I asked Daniel, tell me, should I read something? How do I get into the mood of the meeting? Or what's the thinking? What's happening? And he said, look, why don't you read the declaration? Which I did. And I find it, I congratulate the authors of it, because I find that it's a very succinct and political way of describing the nature of the problem. And if you will permit me, I'm going to quote parts of it in order to be able to make some comments on it, and then I'll go on to some other points. To be protected is not a privilege, but a right. And you quote, very important, it's not a privilege, but a right. So what we're talking about is about social rights. Sometimes that is completely forgotten, and instead this is sort of an individual problem that needs to be solved in itself. It's not that, it's social rights. But I think that is very interesting because you quote the Human Rights Declaration. Everyone as a member of society has the right to social security and is entitled to realization through national efforts and international cooperation, and in accordance with the organization and resources of each state, of the economic, social, and cultural rights indispensable for his dignity and free development of his personality. You can see that the gender dimension wasn't very present in the authors of the human rights, but its dignity and its personality and its person, the human person. So that's the first approach that you need to have in order to understand what it means to look at social protection. The second one is something that I find very important. It says it's a set of policies and programs designed to reduce and prevent poverty and vulnerability throughout the life cycle. There's no way you can understand social protection unless it's understood that it's from maternity protection to old age. And it covers you throughout life. So if it's a social right and that covers you throughout life, that gives you the training in which you have to address the types of policies that you put in place. And consequently, one policy follows another as we all move through our different life cycles. The third one is, in relation to that, it says at a deeper level, much of the promise of the public establishment of robust social protection regimes lies in their potential to progressively undo systemic injustices and foster long-term shifts in attitudes, nurturing a societal ethic of reciprocity and a sense of responsibility to one another. These are not terms that are usually utilized in describing social protection. And I think it's very important that you put it. Systemic injustices, I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we move forward. The attitudes, ethic, reciprocity, responsibility are essential elements to understand precisely the human dimension of the whole issue. Then it will be useful to emphasize that social protection is not a partisan issue. It belongs not to the right nor the left, and this consensus should be the setting point, the starting point for its implementation. I think that this is generally valid for the whole sustainable development objectives, for the whole notion that we have to move to a sustainable development. This isn't one thing against another. This is a demand, it's a central element in the manner we have to understand the way we're going to develop our societies towards the future. And particularly the things that have to do with human beings cannot be seen exclusively in that realm. Why am I saying it? This has not been the history of the subject. The history of the subject is that and continues to be the reality of the subject. You have to struggle in order to move forward, and you struggle politically, and you struggle in a number of different ways. So ideology matters, but the thing here is that it's not one way of looking at it or another, but the one in which we can feel that we are resolving the practical problems that we are talking about, and that I also talk about the context within which we are now working. And finally, the reason you're all convened here, that you are encouraging the persons dealing with the declaration, encourage language that ensures social protection policies and processes include civil society input in the design, implementation, and evaluation of the program. I find I've just chose some elements, but recommend the reading of it. It's quite a synthetic and well-constructed document with the political issue. So because of the reports that you have in front of you, and this takes some more going into the detail, but try to address some big picture issues. We obviously have a long way to go, and I won't quote the statistics, and the Secretary did so, and these different reports give you the statistics. The basic social floor, the universal social protection, and the basic social floor is far away. It's far away. It's not something that we can see that it's close. It's certainly far away. So the task and the job is absolutely essential. In moving forward, I would like to make just a succinct analysis of the way we have moved on this issue. And this came as a result of a question I was asked in one of the meetings. The way this was dealt historically was charity. It was the king, it was churches, it was whoever was important, quote unquote, in a region, etc. There was a sense of responsibility towards the people where you expected them, but you also had a sense of responsibility towards them. So charity was a dimension for a long, long part of history. Then came something that is rather important. In the 19th century, Germany said, no, we have to have social protection policies, we have to have social policies. And the logic was to say, look, Germany is growing and we need a workforce that is healthy and increasingly educated. So it was seen as a matter of ensuring that the economic system worked, that we needed it for the purpose of the economy, it wasn't needed for the purpose of the individual needs of people. Then you move into 45 and 80, right after the Second World War, and then suddenly the notion of social policy emerges as a central part of the manner you organize society. And you create the welfare state. The welfare state, whose concept, even the use of the language, has disappeared. But you used it. You used it to create elements of a welfare state, and the United States, Europe, and Japan basically created middle classes. Initial middle classes were born out of that structure. Then comes a shift. This says, look, too much welfare. And you begin, and this probably occurs around the arrival of Reagan and Thatcher to the government, to begin with what we now would call a neoliberal look, neoliberal policies, a neoliberal globalization, which I'm going to talk a little bit about. In that context emerges the social summit. The social summit emerges because you can see already at the beginning of the 90s that this thing is really going the wrong way, and that you do not have an overall vision of the role that the social dimension of things and the need to put people at the center of development. That was being lost. So the social summit performs that function. And now we are putting all of this in the context of the 2030 agenda, in which we move into the social floor. Just use the word mentioned. What was behind the notion of the social floor? We began using it in the ILO in 2008, 2009. Why? Because we find that the notion of social protection in general, linked to social cohesion, we call it social integration in the social summit, needed to be more. You need to be more precise on the action. If not, you have to explain in every issue what had to be done in every issue, and that in terms of political communication, wasn't working. And then what happened is that everyone was looking for its own subject, pursuing its own subject. So we said, look, we better find a way of explaining that this is something universal, that we need to congregate about something. And we said, look, every society has a right to have a social law. If anybody disagrees with that, please raise your hand. And nobody raised their hand. It was an obvious way of formulating the issue. So the social floor, interestingly enough, became very rapidly something that people said, okay, that I understand. So let's begin from that floor, and those floors are going to be different than last time. We call it floor. I mentioned this because I think that this has been a very important factor in making people feel that, yeah, okay, let's work at the social protection issue, because, okay, we have to see what the floor is, we have to begin seeing where countries find themselves, and then we can begin seeing what other, but then you gave the issue an integrated approach, because you can't define a floor simply by looking at one or another issue. And that's I think, the reason we put it on the table, and the reason I think it has been successful. We very rapidly produced a recommendation in the ILO. The truth is that it caught on very, 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 very rapidly. Let me mention some dimensions which I see as obstacles towards the future. Sustainable development is supposed to be on economic, social, and environmental issues. From the point of view of the United Nations, there's no doubt that the environmentalists were worked at from Stockholm onwards. I won't give details, that we know, what is it that we're talking about social issues. But on the economic side, something happened in the 50s. In the 50s, the UN was told, look, you concentrate on social, environmental, did not exist at the time. We concentrate on social, economic and social council. You do the social, we're going to do the economic in Washington. And that happened in the 50s, and it has not changed. And we have and consequently, the central element that we're facing now is, how do we feel that part of the picture? We have a UN vision on the social, we have a UN vision on the environment. What is the UN vision on the economy? You see, I know that this is an issue that Undersecretary Liu is very, very, very interested in. And we need to be able to generate from the integrated capacity of the UN system, but this, I think, performs a very important function here. And I think it's probably the reason the Secretary General is proposing that there is a chief economist. We need to be able to develop within the United Nations the notion of what is the economy of sustainable development. What does an economy of sustainable development look like? If we don't do that, what is going to happen is that what we want to do on the environment, what we want to do on social, is going to find itself with permanent difficulties coming from a mode of growth, from a type of globalization that is not founded on the principles in which the 2030 agenda is founded on. And that we already know. We already know that it's a globalization that permits to reduce poverty, but that increases inequality exponentially. And it's based on, this is an observation of course, but what is the root? And in looking at this, I think that this manner of looking at the economy overvalued the capacity of markets to self-regulate. They undervalued the role of regulation and public policy. Deregulation and regulation is an instrument. You sometimes regulate something and you deregulate another. But when you say deregulation is always the best solution, privatization is always the best solution, liberalization is always the best solution, then you transform economic instruments that can be used one way or another into an ideology. And this is what has happened. And obviously there is something to be looked at. And then it devalued a lot of things. It devalued citizens who are looked as consumers, workers more as commodity, education and health as a source of business, as business opportunity. Even philanthropy, which is so important, is founded on the notion that if you do philanthropy, you get the tax cut. So I'm just referring to things that are happening. We simply have to look at them. They're not all bad, they're not all complicated. The globalization process has produced a lot of wealth and betterment in general of life, and technologies have emerged, have developed, etc. We know all of that. But we have enough science that this form of globalization is not going to accompany us in reaching the Sustainable Development Goals in order to reach the social and environmental objectives that it says there. So that needs to be addressed. Then you have the role of public-private partnership. I think that is important. It covers a wide array of actors. I personally was a member of something called the Group of Eminent Persons, so that was dealing at the beginning of the beginning of the 70s with the issue of the role of multinational corporations. We called them transnational there. And at the time there was a consensus that this needed to be dealt with, and that group produced in which we had heads of CEOs of large enterprises, etc., large corporations, made a proposal that there should be a code of conduct for transnational corporations. We changed the subject of multinational, transnational, because in reality, most large corporations do come or originated at least in a particular country and continue to be one way or the other linked. The way you realize that is if you have a problem in your own country with some regulation that affects a company, there's an ambassador from some country that has to see. So countries acknowledge the fact that some the companies have linkage with their own countries. I think that this is a very important part of the picture, because there's no doubt that you need, the private investments on many of the issues that are going to be dealt with. But you need a private investment that is sympathetic to a new way of understanding the role of enterprises by helping these other things occur and happen. And what we see too often is that countries are put in competition with each other. They say, look, I could make the investment here, but country next door, basically, I'm indifferent if I do it here or there. Is offering me a better deal. Most countries do not have the capacity to negotiate that situation. So this idea that your fiscal system is a source of competition for investment is something that we need to be able to look at. The danger that this becomes a practice, and that this is the manner in which companies define the way in which they invest. Of course, it has to do. It's real. But the danger that public-private partnerships become something that is not oriented in terms of the common good, but rather very much defined by the power that an investor has. I think it's an important thing that the UN could look at. I want to end with looking at the civil society and the role of this civil society in all of this. First of all, congratulations. From my experience, environment began in '72 in Stockholm, but before that there was already civil society movements dealing with the issues. But Stockholm went, if you talk about the UN, not too much happened. It was civil society that has kept alive the environmental movement. It's been civil society movements that have kept alive the environmental issues, environmental movement, the women's issue, and gender equality, and many individual issues, aging, discapacity, and other concrete indigenous people, etc. It's the movements that have maintained this alive. Up until when there is a convention, there is something that happens in the UN system. Today something global happened with the sustainable development. So it's very difficult not to acknowledge the role that movements, citizens' movements, have played in all of the issues that find themselves in the sustainable development goals and in the 2030 agenda. I personally lived it both in the case of Rio, because I was there, and in the case of the social summit, in which we had around 6,000 people participating in the meeting in Copenhagen. So that's I think it's the first thing to take a look at. What are the tasks today? I think that increasingly this task that has been very visible in the global conferences is going to have a national root, and that's why I was asking how many people come from different regions. Because what you have today is that this implies major changes if you take a look at what the economy should look like and some of the social issues. So for that you need a consciousness raising, you need information being given. For example, there's much more consciousness on climate change than on sustainable development. Just giving an example, and of course sustainable development is very much a part of climate change, is very much a part of sustainable development. But the 2030 agenda is not something well known. It's not something that you talk about the 2030 agenda. You talk about the Paris Agreement, it's better known. I'm just giving an example of the sort of things that need to be done nationally. Part of it is to inform, but also to contribute to the mindset change. These things that global movements did with many of these issues, and they took them from questions that were, contesting the way things were, to a space in which people say, yeah, why not? And then you move to say, well, what can we do about it? That process of consciousness raising and mindset changing, I think, is going to be very necessary at the national level. Also, civil society movements are going to have to deal with the issue of multidimensionality and of policy integration. Every one of the 17 goals is multidimensional. We talk about multidimensional poverty, but it's a general situation, and because they are multidimensional, they move sideways. And moving sideways means that you have to have integrated policy. Now, how does that work? It's a very complicated technical issue, because you can easily fall prey to the notion that everything depends on everything, and consequently you're part of a thing. So to be able to say, the multidimensionality stops here. And here with these dimensions we have 75, 85% of the issue. Okay. If you have to have 15 to get 100%, you're not going to do it. So where do you define the multidimensionality of every one of the goals? And the same thing with the policy integration. So it's a major technical job. Again, I believe that the UN can perform a very important function there. But since these things are going to begin emerging at the national level, it's going to be a demand that is going to come upon you. It's not yet, because governments are not yet in the mode of shifting from unidimensional policies to a multidimensional view. So the UN has a certain time to be able to develop the notions of multidimensionality and policy integration, but so the same thing will happen naturally. But we all have to prepare to the fact that at some point in time, that's going to be a click, and to say, okay, this is the way we want it, and we may not be prepared to deal with this, which is an extremely complex issue. I mentioned this. And of course you have the traditional role of civil society, which is to pressure governments to be up to the commitments that they've taken or to the agreements that they've taken at the international level. That is a traditional function of civil society. But also what's going to happen is that it's very difficult to look at all of this, sort of creating sort of generally applicable ways of looking at the problem, because the most probable thing is they're going to have 193 ways of implementing the social, the sustainable development goals. It's going to be very national. It's going to be very rooted in the realities of each society, what the priorities are. What of all these enormous things, we're going to begin with? Well, we're going to begin with the social floor, for example. That question is going to repeat itself with most of the issues. So we are going to have to be very conscious of being very sensitive for the national situation, and that's why I'm mentioning the important role that civil society has to play nationally. But good to become and inform globally about what you're doing. But the nitty-gritty part of learning by doing and looking at others is probably going to happen at a regional level. So this means also regional organization of the civil society. So we're moving into a situation in which you will have a presence nationally, regionally, and globally, and why not think about a global sustainable development movement? At least think about it. See what you mean. The coming together of who and how and in what manner. I would at least give it a try. So let me finish by saying that all of this is difficult. But the difficulty, how can I say it? The moment you choose to try to change society, you made another choice, which is not necessarily a conscious choice to begin with, but which becomes very evident as we move along. If you want to change society, you have chosen to lead a life of swimming against the current. And the more you're conscious of it, the easier it is to go ahead and do it. But it's a choice. It's a choice that was not conscious, but it's a choice that comes to you as a result of real life. So that choice, which makes what we do difficult, is extremely interesting. Because I sometimes ask, well, but where does the energy come from? For people who are struggling and fighting for this thing. Oh, in my own case. And I say to myself, well, it comes from the difficulty. It's the difficulty that keeps you alive. It's the difficulty that makes you continue thinking. It's the difficulty that makes you say, well, I'm not going to give up. And you advance a bit, and you go back, and then you advance another bit, and this is what it's about. And that's why what you're doing has such a fundamental element of real life. But it has this enormous difficulty. So let me leave it there. Let me make it just a final comment, because we began a little late. We didn't begin at 11:30, 10:30. The personal comment. In 2018, I'm celebrating two 50-year anniversaries. One is the partnership with my wife, which is, it's possible